we go for launch.
5.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4.
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3.
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your mission commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen. Today's mission takes us to a deserted desert planetoid. This is going to be like Robinson Crusoe on Mars. In getting to know each other, we want this podcast to be as interactive as can be through social media. We're going to put forth some questions to the three of us here, and then at the end of the podcast, we're going to throw it out there to you guys to hit us up on our Twitter and Facebook pages and give us some information on what you guys would do if you were on a desert planetoid or meteor, and all you could have with you are 2 TV shows and 5 movies. That's it. No more, no less. Straight away, we're going to kick it to the orbital satellite. Walker, can I please have your 2 TV shows? And let me let you listeners know, we have not discussed this with each other beforehand, so this is going to be a lot of fun.
All right, I'm tuning in my inner Rossiter.
We are receiving.
Okay,
we are receiving
signal.
So
this was a difficult question, or questions. So many TV shows and movies to choose from, and thinking about the ones that have really stuck with me over my life. But there was one TV show that there was no way it could not be on my list. You probably know what I'm going to say. Star Trek, the original series.
Dun, 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 dun.
I mean, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking, well, geez, I'm going to be on this planetoid, and I only get 3 seasons, and frankly, one was not very good. But those first 2 seasons are so fabulous, and and I pretty much have all of the dialogue and scenes ingrained in my DNA at this point. So do I really need to bring them? I thought I could bring Deep Space Nine, which I dearly love, but I don't know. There's no way I can't bring classic Trek, and that says a lot about who I am. So then the second show, and we're bringing whole seasons here, folks. Right. Whole seasons, or whole shows, all the seasons. The second one, I thought, well, you could bring Deep Space Nine, and I thought, I need some variety. I can't just watch Star Trek all the time. Blasphemer. The second show, I decided on the classic Outer Limits. Such great stories, the fantastic alien and monster designs. Just love that show to pieces. I still pull out the DVDs and watch it. Yes, I'm old school. I have DVDs. So those are my 2 shows.
No, they're quite logical, I would say, Walker. Nice
Thank you.
Variety.
Thank you.
Let's kick it over to Bob, and then we'll get into a little more discussion into what your guys' picks are. Bob?
Well, again with me, there was one that was a no-brainer, and I think everyone could guess, and that would be Ultraman.
Yes.
So Ultraman. I can sit there and watch, rubber monsters get beat up all day long. So, and the original series was such a classic that, even though there were some other series that were longer and whatever, it's like I could sit there and watch the original Ultraman all day long. Even if that's the only thing I could bring, that would be fine with me. Second series, and it's interesting that Karen picked The Outer Limits, because I was having a hard time choosing between The Outer Limits and another series. And even though I love The Outer Limits, I'm thinking, well, this other series has so many episodes, and I can sit there all day long and watch marathons when they're on. Mm-hmm. So I had to pick The Twilight Zone. Dun, 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 dun. And again, even though we've seen The Twilight Zone millions of times, and different stations have the marathons and whatever, it's like I can still sit there and watch them. And even though I know what the twist endings are, you're sitting there and just waiting for that. Oh, here's the twist. This is great. Watch this. Right, boom.
Right,
and
right.
And
it's a high-quality show.
And invariably, when I'm watching those marathons, even though I've watched them many times, an episode or two will pop up that I've never seen before. So maybe I haven't seen the whole thing. But I will if I'm out on this desert planet.
There you go. I'll give you guys my two, but the takeaway from Walker is original Star Trek. That is one of mine, but when Karen and I first met, we would play like Hero Clicks and Dungeons and Dragons, and at some point in time, she showed me this. I think it was a membership card that you made for Star Trek. You remember that, Karen?
Oh, gosh. It was something I had when I was a little kid, back in grade school.
And that was one of the first things that we bonded on, because when I was in school, we did a Star Trek fan club, too, and another friend of mine sketched out all these ships and stuff like that. With Bob's choices, memory fails me, so there's a lot of Star Trek episodes and Twilight Zone episodes that I'll watch and think, oh, I've never seen them before. I just haven't seen them for a while, and I forget the ending or the plot line. But Ultraman, I remember taking the light bulb out of my mom's fish tank and using that as the beta capsule and running around. I got in so much trouble over that. But okay, so classic Trek is one of mine because one of the things we'll do when the three of us get together, we'll ask these silly questions like we're doing here on this podcast, and you guys are listening, and again, hopefully you share your stuff with us. But why would you pick something like Star Trek or Twilight Zone? My second pick, I was going to say All in the Family. Just kidding. There was this
Sanford and Son.
yeah. There was this GIF that we used, and it was Archie Bunker, and it was just so weird, him just doing this face. I had to throw that out there and give Archie some props on our podcast. My second, in doing my pick, I'll give you a little background, because Bob had mentioned watching a marathon on TV. It's one thing to watch it in high def, digital sound, blah, blah, blah. It's another thing to watch it on TV when they're showing an episode and you have nothing better to do. And, I don't know how it is on planet Earth, but on Planet 8, we have like millions of channels that we can watch from across the galaxy. And to sit through commercials means you really love that show. My second show is The Addams Family. I love the Munsters, too. I was going back and forth between Addams Family and the Munsters. Who doesn't love to laugh? The Munsters' shtick was they were monsters living in our reality, and everyone got that they were monsters and would get scared or confused or whatever the episode was. The Addams Family relatively looked like us, but they embraced the macabre and the strangeness, and that made them mysterious and ooky and altogether kooky. Let me go over to Bob. So, with the Twilight Zone, what is one of your earliest memories of a Twilight Zone episode? What was it, and what did it mean to you at that time? I mean,
earliest memory was probably William Shatner seeing the gremlin on the wing.
Nice,
yeah,
nice,
perfect.
Yeah.
That one still sticks with me as a favorite. Another memory from Twilight Zone would be showing the Talking Tina episode to my daughter. And, she has the whole thing where I'm Talking Tina and I love you. And then Telly Savalas, is alone in the room, and she's like, I'm Talking Tina and I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
And my daughter just like freaked out. It was like, holy, yeah. So that was always fun. But ever since then, yeah, we'll sit there. I mean, she's moved out and into her own life now and things, but those Twilight Zone marathons will come on, and she'll be like texting me, "Oh, this episode's on. Oh, look, check this one out," or "Oh, this one's coming up," and we'll text back and forth about it. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we continue to enjoy.
Cool. And then over to Walker. So we'll save Star Trek for a little later on, but Outer Limits. The monsters were cool. I was not a big Outer Limits fan. My mother was, actually, so she'd watch Outer Limits. I was more of a Twilight Zone fan. But Walker, I'll throw it out to you too. What's one of your first memories of the Outer Limits? What was it? The monster, or did something? What sparked that interest?
Yeah, I think initially it was the monsters. We used to get it. So I used to get a channel out of Los Angeles, Channel 11, used to show Outer Limits on Sundays. And Sundays we usually used to have to go to my grandparents' house, and there wasn't a whole lot for me to do, so I would sneak off into a back room and I would watch Outer Limits. And initially it was always the monsters, but then as I got older I began to understand the stories, and they just had really great classic science fiction stories. And I think one of the ones that first got me, there's a great episode with Robert Culp, The Architects of Fear.
Yes.
And that's probably my favorite. But there's just so many really good episodes. And just the work on the monsters, sometimes it was hit or miss, but they had so much imagination and so many strange and crazy different creatures. Sometimes you'd sit there and try to figure out, like, oh, how are they manipulating that mask, or how are they doing that? So that was a lot of fun. And I just enjoy. I wish they had made more seasons. They often compare Outer Limits and Twilight Zone, but obviously Twilight Zone had so many more seasons. Mm-hmm. And really, I think the biggest similarity is just they were anthology shows. They were really quite different in their approach.
I agree with you. A lot of the stories were different.
Zanti Misfits. That's the one that sticks out for me.
That is gosh. Too. Yeah, that's a hard one to watch for me still.
And then back then, there was an amazing artist named Hua Chang.
Yes.
Who did masks basically for Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, Star Trek. Mm-hmm. A lot of the classic aliens that you saw on those shows were all from Hua Chang. So, look him up and check him out, because he did some amazing work.
True.
He also designed the original Romulan spaceship for Star Trek. Yeah. Oddly enough, it wasn't Matt Jeffries, but Hua Chang. And there's a story, I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but there's a story that he got ticked off about something and actually destroyed that ship. And that's why they wound up using the Klingon cruisers for the Romulans later on in the series.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. We'll go to Bob. We'll talk about Ultraman, and then we'll get into Star Trek. I know we all like Star Trek. What was it about Ultraman, Bob? I mean, there's Spectre-Man, there's Ultra 7, you kind of got into, this might not be the longest series, but...
Well, if anyone knows me over the years, you'll know that, Ultraman, Godzilla, big parts of my life. And again, with series, I could go into, hey, I'd like to take Kamen Rider, Inazuma, Kikaida, and just throw a bunch of stuff out there. But
right.
Ultraman was always number one. In fact, I was watching Ultraman on TV here in the San Francisco Bay Area, like before I even discovered Godzilla. And the original series actually showed here like in 1967, like a year after it was on in Japan. This was one of the earlier markets. So, I mean, as kids, we'd be out in the lot behind my house and playing Ultraman and beating each other up and, yelling and everything else. But, no, I just, up until that point, superheroes were like George Reeves' Superman.
Right.
Or Adam West Batman or the Green Hornet. And then suddenly, here's this alien from the sky that comes down and, fights monsters. And the best of the episodes are just like little mini Toho films, or little mini Godzilla films. Just the quality on a lot of them really stood up. And it was just caught my imagination from the beginning. Even, the jazzy soundtrack or the swirling open where the paint is swirling and it becomes Ultraman. And the whole thing was just, I couldn't get enough of it as a kid, and I can't get enough of it as an adult.
Cool. Let me just throw this out there, too. If you guys have not checked out Ultraman, you really should. They are fun episodes to watch. And just don't get in trouble taking the bulb out of your parents' fish tank, using it for the beta capsule. So let's talk about Star Trek. Go back over to the satellite. Walker, are you reading us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. All right, there's Deep Space Nine, there's Next Gen, there's Enterprise, there's Voyager. Now we have Discovery. I will tell our listeners that at some point in time in a future podcast, we will touch on many, if not all, of the iterations of Star Trek. I think deep to all three of our hearts is the original series for various reasons. Walker, we're going to do another time, displacement thing here. And what is your earliest memory of Trek? How'd you come across it, upon it?
Well, so I have an older brother who was probably one who originally became interested in Star Trek, and probably introduced me to it initially at the time that it was on air. But I was so small, I wasn't really, it didn't really hit me. And then it came into syndication, and it was on all the time. I mean, I'd get home from school and we'd have 2 to 3 hours of Star Trek. So I was watching it, all the time. Just became sort of obsessed with it for a while there. I think the thing about Star Trek, similar to Marvel Comics, which was probably the other big obsession of my young life, was that, they offered things that sort of went along with what my parents, who I guess should have been the major influence in my life, and they were the major influence, but, it all reinforced these belief systems, I mean, Star Trek was all about a very positive vibe and
right.
And plus it looked great, right? It looked fantastic at the time. It was, now we can look on it and say, well, effects weren't great, but, it was more about this positive future, this adventure, and then you had somebody like Spock, who I think everybody could sort of relate to, this idea of sort of being an outsider. And so, that's probably what sucked me in at the time.
Bob?
Well, I think I'm the old folk of the group. I watched it when it was originally on. 1966, when it came on, I was 6 years old. So, I enjoyed it up until, and actually we did a show with like a sci-fi X-Fest show with Bay Area Film Events, my other group. And we had Marta Kristen from Lost in Space, Judy, as a guest. And I told her this story. It's like, I was watching Star Trek up until Cat's Paw. And there's that scene at the beginning where the 3 witches appear on the planet. Mm-hmm. And they're like, go back, go back.
Yeah.
Scared the crap out of me as a kid. And right then, I'm like, I'm not watching this anymore. And I stuck with Lost in Space. And so I didn't watch it again until it started coming out in syndication. I was older, and then I started getting into it. But, maybe I was just too young at the time.
That's funny, because I'll tell you, as a grown man, when that episode comes on, it still freaks me out just hearing them, Captain Kirk. The other thing that freaks me out is the Jack the Ripper. Rajak.
Rajak!
Oh, you're all going to die.
Die horribly.
Kill you all. Die, make you
And
suffer.
it's like the guy kind of sounds like Winnie the Pooh's voice, It's kind of like
So to this day, you can't watch Winnie the Pooh.
Oh well, that's a whole nother podcast.
My brother used to, and in the end credits of Star Trek, they would show the Baylock puppet. Remember Baylock? And when I was really little, I found it quite terrifying. So my brother would grab me and hold me up to the screen when the puppet came on, and I would wail in terror.
We could have a whole podcast on just traumatic moments in movies and TV when we were kids, and ones that scarred us for life.
Yeah, that Baylock is a rough episode for me too, for different reasons, but
I know why.
Yeah. We we would watch Kung Fu. We had a black and white TV set. It had a little timer on it. Mom would set the timer. We'd watch Mary Tyler Moore. Everybody had an hour or so of stuff that they could watch in prime time. But when I started watching Star Trek, it was on weekends, and there was no timer because there was nothing that Mom really had to watch. Back then, kids, there was no VCRs and DVRs and stuff. So I used to think that when something came on TV and that episode was over, you'd never see it again. That was it, So when 3:30 came on, you had to go watch, the movie of the week, and it was Godzilla, or Captain Cosmic was doing his thing, or Dialing for Dollars. You had to, make the effort to watch it because it'll never come on again. Well, since then, things have changed. First episode I watched, I remember to this day, Mom made some bologna sandwiches, and there was more lettuce and bologna because, it's a big family, not a lot of bologna to throw out there. But it was just so lovingly put together. Everyone's parents, does fantastic things for themselves. But Mom put this sandwich together, and we were watching Star Trek. First time I watched Star Trek, and she called Mr. Spock Dr. Spock.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I should call her later today and see if she calls him Dr. Spock still. But we were watching The Devil in the Dark, and that show scared the crap out of me. And I look at it now, and it's like, it's this guy in a rug or whatever. But at the time, it was just, I didn't even finish my bologna sandwich till the end of the episode. My mouth was just open watching this thing. But to this day, that is my fond Star Trek memory.
Well, I think Nimoy does such a good job on that first Vulcan mind meld with and that was the first one, right, in the series.
That was the first time right.
So he's mind melding with his Horta, and just the way he pulled that off. That was pretty spine-tingling.
He really sells it, and it kind of bothers me when I read things where people make fun of like the Horta costume, and it's like, yes, I understand if you didn't. If you're 20 years old and you don't have any emotional attachment to Star Trek, you can look at Star Trek and say, oh, look at how cheap. It's just like a costume with, silly stuff on. But it's like, try to enjoy the story. Try to understand the story. These actors were taking it very serious. They were conveying these emotions, and, they didn't have much to work with. So they were putting themselves in there. And, as a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, whatever, I'm sitting there like buying the whole thing. And today, obviously I'm already pissed off about it. But yeah, it's like I have the utmost respect for Nimoy and Shatner and all those other guys who did what they could and really told us interesting stories with a limited production value.
I agree with you. I mean, Walker and I would have discussions about Trek a lot. And it's like, to me, it was like, all right, we got to film an episode of Star Trek. What are we doing? Hey, aren't they doing a Roman film over there on Studio 7? Go there and get the costumes. Wait, they're doing Nazis over. Get the Nazi costumes. We'll go to a Nazi planet. And, then that was that week's episode. But they put their hearts and souls into these characters. And, it shows. And Shatner had his style of acting, but DeForest Kelley, George Takei, Nichelle Nichols, all of them did great jobs. We're gonna move forward now, and we're gonna get into 5 movies. We talked about our 2 TV series. Going to get into 5 movies, and I think we started with Bob with the TV series, so we're going to start with, or was it Walker that we started with?
Oh,
You started with me.
Started with Walker. We're going to cut to Bob then. Top 5 movies. We'll let Bob go through his list. We will discuss, and then we'll go up to our satellite.
All right. Well, it's really hard. I've been into movies all my life, so it's really hard to narrow it down to just 5. In fact, we were going to do 2, and then I begged to go to 5. All right, so...
No particular order, Bob. No stress.
In no particular order. And, I try to think, okay, should this be my favorite movies, or just movies that I could watch over and over and over and over and over again? And there may be some differing, there. But number 1, movie I could watch on auto-repeat. I could just lay in bed and watch on auto-repeat over and over and over until the day I die. Would be War of the Gargantuas. So that would be one of them. Another, I figure, I got to have a Godzilla movie in there. So my favorite Godzilla movie of all time is Godzilla vs. The Thing, also known as Mothra vs. Godzilla. But I thought, but if I'm going to watch this over and over and over and over again, I picked Destroy All Monsters, because you can't beat that final battle between all the monsters at the end.
True.
Until maybe when you get to Infinity War or something. That was just blew me away as a kid. It's like when I first saw it, I didn't realize all these monsters were in there. And then you get Ghidorah shows up at the end and they all battle, and nerdgasm. Another would be The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Nice.
Especially if I can watch it in 3D. I don't know if they have 3D on this desert planet, but to this day, I have a 3D monitor and everything else. So out of all the movies that I've watched in 3D at home, Creature from Black Lagoon just people come over, I just say, look, you got to watch this. I know you've seen it before, you got to watch it in 3D. And it's just amazing. For my 4th film, I figured, I got to get something animated. And I was kind of trying to figure out between maybe The Iron Giant or Castle of Cagliostro with Lupin III. And I think if you ask me again next week, I'd pick the opposite, and the week after the opposite again. But I narrowed it down and went with Castle of Cagliostro. Just brings back a lot of memories. It's a great film, one of Miyazaki's early movies. And, Lupin III, what more can you say? And then for my last film, and this is kind of right on the edge, bordering on the fence of fantasy or whatever, but I need a laugh, so I would pick Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which I've probably seen more than any movie in my life, and still not bored of it, so I would definitely bring that along.
Cool. We're going to just making notes here. Those of you who it's not a visual podcast, just audio. Walker, what's your top 5, or at least this week?
Top 5. Okay, yeah, this week
for the day,
because
for the
day. like Bob said, I could easily change from day to day or perhaps hour to hour, depending on what's happening, what I've consumed, what injury I've incurred. So this was kind of tough because, again, it's is it my favorite? Is it stuff I could just sit and watch? I don't know. I did keep it genre related. I thought about a lot of comedies, but I kind of left them out. So in no particular order, I had to do a twofer. So I've got both Star Wars and Empire in there. So that's 1 and 2, just because there's no way I could not do both of them. They have to kind of go together, and Star Wars just had such an impact. As much as I love Star Trek, and I don't see a competition really between them.
Right.
Star Trek was there for me as sort of this philosophical thing. Star Wars was there for sort of the grandeur. So Star Wars and Empire, Planet of the Apes. That movie just there's so much to unpack in that movie. Anytime it comes on, I just sit and watch it because I take such delight in that film. For a more modern film, there's been so many great Marvel movies, and I really enjoy them, but probably my favorite is Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
It's a good one.
I really enjoy that. I think it's probably to me the best all around as far as writing, production, and so forth. So that, and then my final movie, one of those, there was a bunch of movies in the 70s that I got to see because my brother's 6 years older than me, and he took me to a lot of things I probably shouldn't have seen. And one of those was Excalibur.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Just such a strange fantasy film, but I really enjoy. Not only it has a very different visual look, but that soundtrack is really great. I still listen to that soundtrack all the time. So those are my 5. What about you, Larry?
Those are good movies you guys came up with. Okay, so my top 5, in no particular order, would be Star Wars. Luke on Tatooine, farm boy, discovers the Force, and journey ensues. I had to go with Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah,
I remember seeing the motion picture at a drive-in in the city of Paramount as a young lad, and even though the speakers actually came through your car stereo, that was new at that time. You didn't have the little boxes. It was just. A lot of people call it the motionless picture. I like the V'ger sounds, but it just wasn't a lot of Trek going on for me. And let me just clarify that when we say POTA or Planet of the Apes, we're talking about Chuck Heston. Get your damn dirty paws off me, you damn dirty apes.
Damn dirty ape.
That's right. So if we say an earlier or a later version of Planet of the Apes, we'll call it as such. But my POTA is the same as Walker's POTA. 1968. It was amazing the makeup that they did back then. I mean, now everything's CG and whatever, but man, it still holds up to this day in my book. I'm going to go with Bob's almost choice, Iron Giant.
Oh.
The movie is animated, but it speaks to the heart. And I could have picked a lot of Pixar. I love the Pixar animation. There's a lot of other stuff out there, but Iron Giant. Number 5. I'm going to go with Chris Reeve, Superman. I believed a man could fly, and I think that film, as much as I love the Marvel movies, to me that started the superhero movies. Tim Burton's Batman, people talk about that. Chris Nolan's Batman, all of the Marvel stuff, fantastic films, all of them. But Chris Reeve, Superman, number 5. So look, we're going to go straight into this. Walker, I think you, I, and Bob went to a Monsterpalooza. Those of you who don't know about Monsterpalooza, Google it. It's a great convention they have for monster fans. And they have movie nights. Well, they have all kinds of stuff going on there. But this guy came, I don't know, Bob, if you saw it that night, from the 3D Society. Do you remember, Karen?
Yes.
And he had a screen that he set up, and wasn't it like pieces of silver in it or something like that?
Yes, it was very
or
unusual.
Aluminum.
Screen.
Yeah, it was just this like. Anyway, so and then he had like 2 different projectors or something, and I have never seen. I saw Infinity Wars in 3D on IMAX, and that was pretty cool. But that freaking Creature from the Black Lagoon, black and white, projected on that screen, was phenomenal. And we've all seen Creature on a number of occasions in different, formats, be it TV, DVD, 3D, or whatever. But that, to me, Bob, did you catch that night? Or
I did not. I don't know why I did not. But, yeah, Creature from Black Lagoon, anytime you can see it in 3D is worth seeing. Even if it's like, I've seen it in 3D on like an old 16 millimeter print. I saw it on 3D when we did all 3 Creature films at the Castro Theater back in, I think it was about 2008. And saw it 3D there along with Revenge of the Creature. And, again, I was watching it 3D here at home. Yeah, I can't get enough of the movie, and I can't get enough of any of it. So if I do bring that movie to the desert planet,
it'll be 3D.
I would probably bring my pinball machine as well, because I do have the Creature from the Black Lagoon pinball machine. That's how obsessed I am with this film.
Kids, that's a bonus episode that we'll do sometime. And besides the film, what else would you bring related to the film? That pinball machine is pretty awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
I'll play it on the next podcast. Ping, bing, ping, ping. That should be a good show.
We'll do a remote show. Walker, memories, comments on the creature.
Oh, well, that 3D showing was phenomenal. I have to say, I'd seen Creature a lot of times, and so when we went into that showing, I thought, oh, this will be fun, with no real expectations. But seeing it in 3D, I've seen other 50s movies in 3D, and they're very gimmicky. They always have like this gun pointed directly at you or whatever. What we saw, there was so much depth to the print. There were those moments where the creature would reach out or something, but there was just a lot of depth to the print, and it just looked fabulous. So yeah, that's another one I would highly recommend somebody, if they haven't seen it in 3D, to see it in 3D.
Yeah, I think the most amazing 3D effect in the original Creature from Black Lagoon is when they find the fossilized claw and they're digging it out, and they get a shot where the claw actually physically comes like right out of the screen at you. And I have yet to see a better 3D effect than that one right there.
True. And listeners, let you know, I'm terrible at spoiler alert warnings. So if you haven't seen Creature from the Black Lagoon, whoops.
If you haven't seen Creature from the Black Lagoon, then
there's a creature in it.
There's a creature, and there's a Black Lagoon. And hey, let's cut over to what struck me is Walker's list, Excalibur. Did you see that, Bob?
I saw Excalibur back when it originally came out in the theater, and I don't think I've seen it since.
Oh, my God.
Not that I didn't like it, I just haven't seen it since.
There's this great line that I use all the time where they're talking to Merlin. It's like, what are you, Merlin? What are you? A dream to some, a nightmare to others.
A king and the lander one.
Walker, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Liam Neeson and Patrick Stewart in that film?
Yes, they are both
Young.
in that film, early in their careers, or early-ish. It's just, it's sort of a little treasure trove to me of things. It is an odd movie, though. I mean, like,
it is.
Some of the stuff, like the director had his daughter in a sex scene. There's just some weird stuff.
Oh, my.
And I went and saw this. I think I was like 13, and there was some weird stuff in it. It definitely, it made it made an impression, obviously. But there's, it's just beautifully filmed. It has, it's obviously fantasy, because of the way it's filmed with this kind of soft glaze over everything. I wish I could do it justice. I'm not really expressing it, but people, I would say check it out.
Definitely.
It's no Lord of the Rings. It's much bloodier than anything in Lord of the Rings, but it takes that Arthurian legend and puts kind of a spin to it that I still find really fascinating and can watch over and over.
Yeah, it's a good film. Off of my list, the Wrath of Khan. I have a great story. We all, matter of fact, I met Bob through going to Thrillville. Will Viharo used to do this cinema cabaret at the Parkway Theater, and they had beer, pizza, popcorn, and couches inside the theater. And this is before anyone else did it. I mean, this is like
Oakland, California, by the way.
In the 510, Oakland, California. And anyway, he played Neptune's daughter. And Walker, did you come with me to that one?
I did not see that one.
Did not see that one, Bob. I don't think you were there. That was
Neptune's daughter. No, I did not see that.
Ricardo Montalban and her name escapes me now. She would dance in the pool, and they do that synchronized pool dancing. And it's not Esther Williams. Anyway, forgive me. We'll throw it on the Twitter and Facebook page what the actress's name was. Anyway, so I'm watching this.
Esther Williams?
Esther Williams. I think it's Esther Williams. Thank you, Walker. And it's this Hollywood film. I mean, the great thing about Thrillville is I would watch things in Thrillville that I wouldn't watch on my own. So we can go through a list of films. I'm sure Will has it on his site, movies that he's played. But Walker and I go to the Star Trek convention. It's the Wrath of Khan's, 10th anniversary, 20th anniversary, something like that. And Ricardo Montalban is there. Now, he was incapacitated. He had back issues, was it, Walker? Something like that? He
had back issues.
Yeah.
So he was in considerable pain. This was also the first time he had appeared at a Star Trek convention.
First time at a Star Trek convention. Pasadena?
Yes.
Anyway, we go there, and everyone's like, oh, I loved you in, Fantasy Island. And someone actually went up to the mic and said, could you say Corinthian leather? Because he did the Pontiac commercials, and he was very accommodating. And they had a special chair for him, like a lazy boy. And, it's, when you go to these conventions and you go to get an autograph, it's like an assembly line. And it has to be that way in order to accommodate the hundreds of people trying to get an autograph. And so the cool actors are like, look at you and say, oh, thank you very much, and smile and send you on the way. The ones who have a plane to catch are just signing, and, their handlers kind of escort you through the line. But everyone, we loved you in Wrath of Khan. Thank you for being here. And I said, I loved you in Neptune's Daughter. And then, I swear to God, he stopped signing. He looked up at me and he smiled. Oh, that was a good movie. I could tell you some stories about Esther Williams. And I was just like, and these, fellow geeks next to me were like, oh, he's actually talking to him, and it's like, anyway, that's my Ricardo Montalban story related to Wrath of Khan. Bob, you saw Wrath of Khan in theaters?
Of course.
And did you hear, this is again pre-internet, did you hear about what was going to happen in the film? It got out.
No, actually, no. I purposely ignored everything and went in and
good man.
And it really, when that first came out, it was like everybody's like, Khan?
This is 1982.
They're bringing back Khan? Why Khan? Yeah. But he did such a great job in that he's suddenly went from sort of a B villain in the series to being like one of the A-list villains in the film.
I'd argue one of the best villains thus far. I mean, he holds up with,
And, Cumberbatch did not do him justice.
Unfortunately.
In that new film. I think that's when was it Star Trek Into Darkness, was it?
I think it's Darkness, yeah.
It was a pretty good movie up until he said, I am Khan, and then that was it. The whole thing went to trash. But, yeah. Then they kind of tried to, copy the first film, and just not very well.
Yeah, well, that's another podcast. Walker, impressions of Star Trek 2.
Oh, well, it was hard not to put it on my list.
Did you know about the death? Spoiler alert. Did you hear about it? You heard about it before?
No, I didn't know about it, okay. And that's one of the beauties of pre-internet days. This is a side thing, and I know we're getting close to time here on our transmission. The other day I had a tour of a museum, and the young lady giving the tour was talking about this magazine that used to be put out for these craftsmen. And she says, yes, before the internet, did you ever think about how people communicated ideas to each other? They're young. They don't know. So anyway, no, I hadn't heard anything. And so it was very shocking to go into Wrath of Khan. And that was the first movie. I used to be a real hard case. Now I'm an old woman, so I cry at Hallmark commercials. But that was the first movie I shed a tear in. And it still gets me when I watch that movie. I'm just kind of like, it's a real kick in the gut, boy.
It is. It holds up. And I was like 13, 14, out with my friends. We heard about what was going to happen. And what was great was in the Kobayashi Maru, not only does he die, but everybody. And we're like, oh, holy crap. They didn't tell us about everyone else. And then they all got up and we're like, oh, it was just, the Kobayashi Maru. He doesn't really die. And he dies at the end. And, we're teenage guys. and we're all bawling, like hugging each other out afterwards. It's okay. I don't know what's gonna happen, but oh my god. Anyway, yeah. So
yeah, I'll tell you one thing about that Kobayashi Maru scenario episode, the whole scene.
Mm-hmm.
It was not the first time that was done. There's
Really?
actually an episode of Stingray, the old Jerry Anderson Super Marination Stingray,
Mm-hmm.
where they did that whole kind of thing, where they started the episode with, they're on, the ship and whatever, and everything. You watch it, you're like, God, this is Star Trek 2 right here. This is where they got it. And so, great movie, but yeah, no, that if you, I'll have to look back and find the episode and maybe post it. But yeah, no, there is a scene much like that Kobayashi Maru in an episode of Stingray. So check it out.
Very cool. Very cool.
Nothing's original.
Well, yeah.
It's all in how you do it.
That is true. That is true. Hey, listeners, it has come to that point in our podcast where we do a sensor sweep and we bring your attention to the latest and greatest products. But because we've shot over our time, we're not going to do that this week. Stay tuned for our next podcast, and maybe what we'll do is a twofer. We'll cover two items that caught our attention and we have in our collection, which is vast because we're all old, and the older you are, the more stuff you collect. Anyway, leave that for the next podcast. Hey, on that note, I sincerely, Bob and Karen, thank you guys for tuning in again. Please share this with your friends, neighbors, and all that stuff. Give us some feedback. Visit us, become part of the podcast through www.planet8podcast.blogspot.com. You can go over to our Facebook page, facebook.com /Planet8podcast. And when I say Planet 8, you put the number 8 in there. Don't spell out 8. We're also on Twitter at Planet8Cast. Look, we really do look forward to your input and your opinions. And until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off in transmission. On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.